December 2022. Oh my gosh, this year has just flown by. What hasn't flown by is the time it has taken me to get Josh Sauer on this podcast. You guys, I've wanted him on for so long, and soon you will know why. But Josh is with Finalsite. He's the director of district communication strategy. He's on their Salesforce kind of team, and he helps schools all across the country. You probably have heard that Finalsite recently acquired Blackboard K-12. We're going to talk about that just a little bit today. But I'm excited for you to learn from Josh today. Josh is a seasoned veteran in the school PR world. He's got a lot of experience, and he's going to dive into some things that we should think about in our communications when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community. Simple things that we can do with our language and our communications. I love this discussion. If you love this discussion as well and want more from Josh with some practical examples, let me know, because we'll have him back on another podcast episode. And he's going to dive into just his journey of being a school PR professional working for a school and jumping into this consultant vendor space, as he says, the dark side, which it really isn't the dark side. You're helping even more people. So he's going to kind of talk through what prompted that change and give some helpful advice if you're thinking about it. And then we're going to just dive into a little bit about Finalsite's product and kind of 3 things that sets them apart. So I'm really excited for you to meet Josh if you don't know him. And I would just say, if this podcast, I've been traveling quite a bit this fall, and I love meeting people that have listened to the podcast and are getting helpful tips and tricks. Please share this podcast with somebody else that's doing school communications. It's really meant to help people, and there's so many people that have never ever heard of it. Mastering social media for schools. There's a lot of people sharing social media for their school districts, their schools. They deserve to know about this podcast. So this week, will you please just pay it forward, give them a share, give this podcast a share, say, hey, take a listen. This will give you a few great ideas for your school. And if you're not subscribed, you better be, because every Monday we drop a new episode. So let's get to first this week's K-12 PR tip, and then into our interview with Josh Sauer. Hey there, this week's K-12 PR tip is a simple one that I just got when I was at the North Carolina School Public Relations Association meeting, and it's High Five Friday. So one of the schools, and I didn't catch the name, but one of the schools does High Five Fridays. They highlight 5 positive photos from the week, and they post them at 5 p.m. every Friday. High Five Friday. The community absolutely loves it. And it's a chance to highlight some great things that happened that may have not gotten highlighted yet on social media. So especially you bigger districts, if you're following some of your different school pages and there's just no way that you can share all of them, what about grabbing 5 different things that you spot and highlighting those on your High Five Friday? I think it's a great way to highlight all the great things that are happening in your district. I love these features that can happen week to week to week, and you kind of have a little theme around them. It makes it really easy. So will you try it? Let me know. You can tweet at me at Andrea Gribble and let me know if you try this out. Give me a link to your post. You can also email me back, andrea@socialschoolforedu.com. I love hearing from you. And if you have a cool strategy that's working really well on your school's social media, I'd love to hear it, because I can't keep a secret and I'll share it with other people. We are all so much better together, and we're going to be better together after this great conversation with Josh Sauer. So let's get to it. Hey, Josh, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Andrea, how are you doing?
I am good. I've got Josh Sauer in the house, and he is the director of district communication strategy for Finalsite. Your job has recently changed, which is exciting.
Yeah.
I hope that many of my listeners already know you, Josh, kind of a celebrity in the whole NSPRA world, but I'd love for you to share your background and kind of your role there at Finalsite.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm a celebrity, but I love the school PR community. been involved with them for a long time. Yeah, a little bit about me. Before joining the Finalsite team 2 years ago, I was a school communications professional at a school district here in Oklahoma. So I spent 6 years in that role, and before that, I was just kind of in general marketing and PR and other basically since college. And so I have a lot of experience in marketing and PR. But at my time in my district, I was served on the OKSPR board, the Oklahoma School PR Association board, and also recently fell off the NSPR board, the National School PR Association board. So I'm passionate about that profession, what they do, and really passionate about strategic communication. And I'm really excited to be on your podcast. It's been a kind of a I know we pushed it off a few times, and that was my fault. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, we're like into the episodes, I don't know, getting close to 140-ish. And you've been on my list for a long time, but here we are.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love that you have stepped into leadership roles, and I think that's why many people know who you are, because you have taken on those responsibilities. 6 years with a school, and then now you are into this role, and it's kind of a newer role, the Director of District Communication Strategy for Finalsite. So what exactly are you doing in that role?
Yeah, so as you know, and probably a lot of folks know, Finalsite acquired Blackboard in September of this year, and so there's been a lot of change and a lot of growth in our company. And so I did move into this new role to better support districts, not only in my territory. Previously to this, I had I had 8 states that I was in charge of working with, and now I'll be covering the entire nation. And really stepping out of a kind of a direct consultant role and being more of a kind of like a thought leader in the school communication space. So I'll be at a lot of SPRA events, talking to folks there. I'll be doing a lot of sessions about digital marketing strategy and communication strategy, but also really just helping current clients with their Finalsite products and helping them the best way I can, but also working with prospective clients who are looking into kind of a strategic communications platform, or we'll do website and mass communication. So it's kind of what they say, all other duties assigned. That's kind of my job, and but I'll really be focused in the school communication space for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, I can't wait to meet you there, because I will be seeing you at some of those events, which will be great. So Josh, I wanted to jump in to one of the things that you did years ago, which was so awesome and so vulnerable. You shared a really highly personal session at NSPRA, and it was with Carla Pereira, APR, who's been a former guest on this podcast. You really wanted to help communicators understand and celebrate, the LGBTQ plus community. Can you just share with me what that whole presentation was kind of about?
Yeah, so that was not several years ago, probably 3 years ago. I think we were in Washington, D.C. When Carla and I presented on that session, and it was about ensuring safe spaces for the LGBTQ plus community, and using school communication to do that. So how in our lane, in our role, can we help that community feel like they belong, feel like they're safe? And in the presentation, obviously, anytime you're asked to present at NSPRA, it's a big deal, because there's a lot of submissions for that. And we were chosen as a special session. And Carla and I, she lives in Canada. I live in Oklahoma, so we're not able to get together and prepare for that. So a lot of the preparation for it was before before the presentation, over phone and that kind of thing. And we were both, this is the first time we had gone down this road and had our vulnerable moments. I had my lived experience, and she has a lot of experience in her previous school system with this topic. And so We came in there, and honestly, looking back, it was the turning point in my career. It was when I felt my voice mattered in the professional learning space. As you said, I did choose to be vulnerable. I shared my lived experience, which I'll talk about in just a moment, and applied that to professional practice. And I think when you reach that in your career, and at some point everyone does, they have that light bulb moment. They're like, I've made it, that was my moment. And I remember, you always crave a standing ovation. You always crave that emotional response to your presentations. And I got that, and it was really cool. But I think that more importantly, I hope folks took something away from that. And I think they did, because obviously you remember that conversation. And I do have other folks that come up to me and talk about that as well. And that was the whole goal of the presentation, was to make sure folks could take something away from it and maybe just apply a little bit of it in their districts. So when we talk about creating safe spaces for LGBTQ plus folks, we're talking about students, but we're also talking about staff members as well. So a good example of that would be like with an employee. I remember being in the break rooms in my old district, and I would have folks say, so do you have a wife? And that seems like such a kind, simple question, right? And it was a very kind, simple question. But when you're asking that to someone who is gay and probably doesn't have a wife, it forces them to come out all over again, right? Which is, for some people, really easy to do. Like me, it's very easy to do. But for some people, that is not easy to do. And so a simple thing that you can do with your communication internally is to change how you ask the question. So, do you have a spouse? Just that little change can mean so much to people. And that's all about, inclusive language and that kind of thing. But in talking about students, I think that this is really the core of our presentation. When I was in high school, it was a very, very dark time in my life. It was not, I didn't do prom. I didn't do some of the things that other students would do. And it was not that I didn't have the opportunity to do it. It was, I was at a conflict there. Like, how do I live my authentic self? You really I couldn't do that in the environment that I was in, because there was really no safe space at that time. It was a long time ago. I honestly never had met someone that was gay until college. So I had no idea. I just thought I was kind of the only one on the planet that was different. And so that's something to think about when we talk about kids and we talk about this topic, that, when folks go to school, they deserve a safe space, and they deserve a space where they belong. And when we think about DEI initiatives and how we communicate about those, it's not something that we just put on paper. It's not a value statement that we continue to repeat over and over in presentations. It's about actually creating safe spaces for belonging, right? And so some of the ways we do that, we are unapologetic about creating safe spaces, right? So I remember a call I just had about a year ago. This is a good example, with a superintendent in Illinois. I'm not going to mention who she was, but she had a lapel, a rainbow lapel. And I looked at that, and I didn't mention anything on the call because it was about business, right? But I thought about that, and I sent her an email later, and I said, thank you so much for wearing that lapel, because if I was a student in your district and I saw that on my principal or my superintendents, I would feel automatically welcome to go chat with that person and feel safe. And so those are the type of things that you can do to be deliberate about it. Mm-hmm. Less writing about it on paper and more showing it every day in your everyday practice. And so Carla Pereira, one of my dear friends, and she always said um, about this topic. And, there's a lot of things to navigate, politics, conflicting interest, all that. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, when it's right, just, and good, we should. And we've done a good job, relatively, of normalizing that type of philosophy in schools. But we still have a lot of work to do. As you know, you see all the time, especially trans students are on the attack in every political ad that I see here in my home state. And they're being marginalized. And so there's a lot of work we do. And when we talk about environments, we're not just talking about school environments, we're talking about, actually, we'll kind of back that up a little bit. So when we talk about environments for any human, regardless of the type of person they are, you have your home. That is your first environment. And then you work your way out to your church. You work your way out to your community where you live. Then you have the news, politics, political ads. Then you have your school system, and so on and so forth. Those are the areas that we need to work on. So it's not just about school. But for the focus of this, how can we, through communication, make it better? And you have to be deliberate. You have to really just be thoughtful about it and create spaces for belonging. And it will, that change will depend on where you're at in the country. But if you can do just a little bit, you will help someone. And it's those small gestures that go a long way.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think your examples are really powerful from staff and then students. I think we often hear these words of belonging and how important that is and how critical it is. And I am from a super small town in Wisconsin, not much diversity. However, all of these things have touched our community now, our school, our little school of 300 students, K through 12. These same things that have been happening at other schools in bigger ways are happening at schools everywhere. So I think this is such a timely topic to talk about. It's not something, obviously, that's solved overnight,
Right.
but it's some of these things that we have to think about and we have to talk about. I love just the little lapel of being able to showcase that. And I know everybody has a different community, different political landscape that's in your area, but we have to love on these kids. We have to love on basically one another, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
to really help them, and we do play a role in communications. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so thanks for being so vulnerable and sharing some of that. And we
Yeah.
could spend the whole episode just
Yeah.
talking about that, and maybe we will coming up because your examples are really good. But leaning into kind of what you just talked about, safe spaces and really that sense of belonging, how can school communicators ensure that they're kind of connecting with and celebrating all students when it comes to social media, when it comes to their website, when it comes to their communications? What are some strategies there that have you that you're aware of that you could share with us?
Yeah. I mean, my answer to a lot of questions around communications is always know who your audience is and where they're at. Right. So you got to meet people where they're at. And so, we have low hanging fruit in school communications, and we should continue to go after that low hanging fruit, empowering others to tell their own stories. If you can do that, is always a great idea. But as school communicators, if you're strategic and you're actually looking for results and long lasting results, you have to lift the rocks too. You can't just go after the low hanging fruit. And so it kind of reminds me, there was this time, we'll go back to high school a little bit. And if you think of yourself in high school, and I was one of these kids, I wasn't a lonely kid. I wasn't a popular kid. I was more of like kind of the loner, but I kind of bounced around.
Mhm.
But I always remember cafeteria time. and I would always see the kids that were by themselves at the table. And inside, I just didn't feel that was like it was an internal feeling that doesn't seem right to me. Like, you know, like, and so I would try to deliberately create like a group to come over there and sit with that person, right? Um, so you have to be like just intentional about it, and you have to go lift the rocks, and you have to go find that person's story who may not be vocal or you know, hey, pick me to tell the story, right? So, you know, lift the rocks, don't go after low-hanging fruit, and that's how you're going to get, you know, a celebration of the full community, you know, that you have there. Another thing is, you know, is tailor that communication. So if folks like to be, you know, if you have families, if you have data through your research that says, you know, 30% of families want to receive Spanish before English, make sure that you're communicating or writing that content in Spanish, right? And if you can't do it through your resources, at least advocate for it and let people know that the data shows that this is what it says, right? And so just meet people where they're at in every single way.
Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome. So kind of transitioning just into your story, because you are one of many of our school PR colleagues that have transitioned from a school communicator to
Oh,
now a consultant slash vendor. Although, you know, just like me, it's like, hey, we like to help people, right? That's kind of what we do.
sure.
But kind of what prompted that change, and what advice would you have for anybody who might be considering that jump from they're in a school now and
Yeah.
maybe considering a job to a consultant or vendor, you know, a company?
Call that the dark side, right? So you're gonna
Oh,
you're gonna, you know, that when I first thought about doing it, it was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, you know, jump to the dark side and everyone's gonna think differently of me. And that did not happen, by the way. Now you obviously your role changes and you have to take responsibility for that. And there's things that come along with that. And uh, but now I have two perspectives, and I think that has been valuable for me in my career for sure. Because my career is, I have a long ways to go, right? And a lot of learning to do. So I'm glad I have this experience. But what prompted the change was the pandemic. Um, I was providing care for my mother-in-law at the time, so I was not able to. Um, I was actually not able to go into work during the pandemic and then bring the virus back home to her. It was
mhm.
not an option for me. And so we had that discussion in my school district, and they were very flexible with me. But I also began to realize that maybe, you know, maybe I grew out of my position, right? Maybe I was done there, and I started to just have feelings of like I wanted more. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to have a national impact because I do know all these school comms people around the nation. And I wanted to impact more schools and do something different. And then so I started thinking, I was like, how can I do that? Right. So the easiest way for me to do that was to start, you know, thinking about consultancy. And so I began a consultancy during the pandemic to kind of help make ends meet. And then one day out of the blue, I got contacted by because I was a client of Finalsite before I became an employee,
Mhm.
and Jason Barnes and Nathan Buell actually contacted me, and they're saying, "Hey, if you know anyone that would be interested in this position, just let us know." And it was an honest question by them. They weren't looking to recruit me at all, and so I slept on that. And I was like, "Well, maybe that's me," you know. And so I the next morning I said, well, as a matter of fact, I might be interested. And so we began that conversation, and that's kind of where I ended up. And it was scary because, you know, my master's degree is in public administration. So I wanted to serve I wanted to be a public servant, right? I had political ambitions and all this stuff. And so it was scary to make that change and kind of pivot to a completely opposite, kind of opposite role. but I had a list of things that were required, right? I had to be able to still help schools in an indirect way, kind of, right? I'm kind of a next step, and we do that through, building better schools with stronger schools. That's kind of Finalsite's mentality, and so I bought into that, and it's been true, and I love my work. What advice would I have is to have your list of requirements. Does it fit into your belief system? Are the values of the organization align with yours? What is the culture like? And then if you do decide to do it, use the experience to your advantage in your role. And I think the number one thing that comes from that is empathy. So, for instance, the past 2 years, I've been in a sales position. I have made 0 cold calls during that time. 0. Now, I've done some cold emails, right? Because those are a little bit less intrusive, but I've done 0 cold calls. And in sales, like, you always make cold calls. Like, that's been a kind of a tradition. My boss is probably going to be like, you could have doubled your sales. You would have made cold calls, but no. I've made 0 cold calls because I know, like, I knew that I knew what people thought of those, right? And so I've just taken some empathy there, and I kind of know when the best time is to chat with folks, and I treat it as a journey and not a sales pitch. It's more of like, it's just a journey, and if you want to use our solutions and learn more about them on your time, then let's do it. And so yeah, that would be my advice: is use your or your work experience to your advantage and show a lot of empathy.
Yeah. And you made 0 cold calls, but I'm guessing you made warm calls.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, relationships, even in non-sales roles, relationships always make things better because you have that trust built, you have the rapport built, and I think people know my character, and that certainly has helped those relationships I built. And really, end of the day, are you going to do what you said you're going to do? And having that trust built early gave me a head start for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing that is great, and you kind of touched on it when you started, is you are extremely proud of the product. You were a Finalsite user, and that that your tool can help school communicators do their job well, and they need tools. Everybody needs a website, and you guys specialize in websites. You do a great job. So there are a lot of companies out there, and if you were to describe like 3 things that set Finalsite apart from other options, I'm putting your sales hat on right now, Josh. But what would you say those are? Because what would you say those
Yeah.
are?
Well, it's because I have a brilliant personality. No. You remember that commercial back in the day? Maybe that was just a local one, but it was this. She was applying for a job, and she's like, hire me because I have a brilliant personality. Anyway, it's just a joke. I would say that, Finalsite has many products. We have a website, we have mass communications, enrollment marketing solutions. And so kind of when we talk about it, kind of the suite of solutions. And I think that when we talk about product, it's not just about functionality, like how they function, because every product out there has functionality, but think it through it with like thought leadership lens, right? So yeah, we're developing a product, but does the company know why they're developing this product? Can they anticipate the needs of school comms folks? Is their product fully developed, or is it still in kind of like a minimum viable stage, right? There's a lot of products out there that are still being actively built, right? And so I knew Finalsite, through using it, was a very powerful solution that was easy to use. But I also know that they use data to continually innovate it. And that data comes from not only surveying folks that use their platform, but they actually hire folks that have worked in schools to kind of guide that process too, through that innovation. And so the mission of Finalsite is to provide a best-in-class marketing and communications platform for schools. And in some ways, we have done that, but we are not done. The CEO talks about this all the time. His name is John Moser. He's been the CEO for 24 years. This product is fully developed, but we're not done. We have a lot of things we want to accomplish. With the acquisition of Blackboard, we've essentially doubled the size of our company, doubled the amount of tools we have. Our product team is going to fully develop a mass comm solution that's going to compete with anyone out there. And so thought leadership, continuous innovation. And then the last thing that I'll talk about is support and design. I'll kind of lump those together because you asked for 3 and I don't want to do 4. So support is the reason why folks leave their providers. If there's a lack of support there, there's a lack of training, they're going to leave their providers. Now, when we talk about support, my philosophy on support is I don't want you to have to call your provider for help, because the solution should be good enough where you don't even have to call them. But we know that there's times when that's going to happen, right? And so ensuring that's a good experience, but also building a product that eliminates the need to have to contact you every day, right? And then the last thing is design. Finalsite is known for its really beautiful designs visually, but also when we talk about user experience being, is it accessible to all? Does it look great on a mobile device? Does it translate well? Those type of things. So design being the last thing that I'll mention, just visually, but also through user experience as well.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of your websites and they do look beautiful. Heard great things about the support that you guys provide. So if you're in the market for a new website, and every few years it seems like people are looking for options, definitely we've got Josh's contact information. You can definitely start with him if you don't know of a rep in your area. You can also head over to finalsite.com to learn more. And certainly if you're at a SPRA chapter in your state, or you're heading to St. Louis in this summer at the NSPRA conference, Josh and his team will certainly be there, either with cookies or delicious bundt cakes. I'm not sure which, but they are to die for. So
Nothing but the best.
Yes, definitely. So as we wrap up, Josh, and this has been a great conversation, you mentioned it already, but what would you say, this is focusing on social media, and we expand beyond that, but what would be your best social media tip for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Know your audience. And then also lean into, Andrea, your company, lean into those resources to learn how to better use it and use it more effectively, right? And so being strategic with your communication tools and your channels is always kind of my mindset. And when we talk about social media, it has its place, and it's very, very powerful. And if you use it to your advantage, you can really be effective with it. But know where that aligns in your entire, integrated communications plan, right? And so just know the place for it. You have really good advice about how to use it and use it effectively, and always tailor your communication. Know your audience, tailor your communication.
And I just want to give a plug for Finalsite. You've got an awesome blog that has great resources. You've got a couple of events that happen every year that are totally free, school PR day and a school marketing day. Those are things that Finalsite is really dedicated to, and it's not just all a sales pitch. They're just trying to provide some of that best in class, kind of programs and experiences and strategies and all of that. And so definitely check out more.
Yeah, I mean, it's you said it, it's thought leadership, and most folks that attend those are not clients,
right,
actually. And we never say become a client. It's just always content. It's obviously content marketing, but we repurpose content throughout the year. We publish 130 blogs every year. I write a lot of those, so please just go read them. Even if you're not a client, I love you the same. Go read them. That way I have job security, right?
Yes, absolutely. All right. So if you weren't connected to Josh, you can be now. Josh, what's the best way for our listeners to stay connected to you?
Well, I'm not on TikTok or Snapchat, so don't go there. I know how to use those, but I value my time and I have a lot of work to do. So Twitter, at Joshua T. Sauer. I participate in the school PR chats, hashtag school PR. What is it? Actually, Kathy Kajijian is going to kill me. Hashtag K12 PR chat. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn, Joshua Sauer, and that's spelled Sauer.
Okay, awesome. And we're just going to leave everybody your email in the show notes as well. If you want to shoot Josh an email, you can do that as well. Thanks so much for the thoughtful conversation, the practical tips here, and good luck as you continue to grow in your role where you're able to help more and more schools across the country. You're definitely a blessing to so many. I'm so glad that you're leaning into the skills and the leadership that God has definitely given you, Josh. So thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Andrea, thank you for having me. And sorry it took so long to get on, but I'm very happy and let me know and when I can come back because I've enjoyed the time here.
Yes, absolutely. We'll get that set up. And thanks everybody for listening in. We'll have another great guest next week. Definitely connect with Josh here, put some of his strategies to work. And in the meantime, guys, keep telling those stories. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.